Good evening, folks. My name is Travis. I'm an autistic author, and today we're going to be talking about sexual behavior, autism, relationships, dating, puberty, all the above. This is everything but the birds and bees of sexuality. So we're going to be talking about, how we navigate social and romantic relationships. So, Owning My Sexual Behavior by Travis.breeding. I'm not aware of any conflicts of interest in my presentation in my talk today, so I just wanted to bring that up. Even though I'm not necessarily a behavior analyst, I feel like I need to say that. So we're going to start with an outline of today's agenda. So we're going to go over a little bit about what I'm going to be talking about, and then we'll dive into the content. So today we're going to talk about who I am. We're going to share my story, going to talk about how I fell in love with ABA, and then we're going to talk about Peter Gerhardt, who's one of my favorite people in the behavior analysis world, because he really talks about autism spectrum disorder, puberty, dating, relationships, sexuality in ways that I relate to and understand. And when I first heard him present in 2011, I thought he was talking about me, and when he was telling stories about people with autism. So he really understands autism, and I relate to him very well. So black and white thinking, we're going to talk about the all or nothing thinking. It was black and white. Gray areas don't exist in my brain. Mindfulness helps me be present in the moment and navigate gray concepts. And step 1 is step 787. Hi, I'm Travis. Can I touch your breasts? The importance of learning steps 2 through 786. That's very important. We're going to talk about how to chain those steps and how to learn those steps in social relationships. Mindfulness and ABA. So mindfulness and ABA. Important soft skill for BCBAs and RBTs to learn. It makes my brain more flexible to gray concepts, relieves the anxiety, and helps me generalize and apply in all settings and social contexts. We're going to talk about all 4 of those things later in the presentation. We're going to talk about context being king. Learning a technical skill is one part of the battle. Examples of contextual errors I've made and why context is king. So we're going to tell this story about how I talked to a girl, and I went up to her and said what my guy friend said to her. I said, "Hey, bitch, what's up?" Thinking that she would reply positively like she did to him, and she had a negative reaction to me. And we're going to talk about why and why I didn't understand that at the time, and explain why context is king and how he knew her differently than I knew her. And then we're going to start talking about how I start to generalize skills from a higher level to a lower level. So I start at a higher level skill, then I backward chain it down to where I'm at, then work with forward chaining to get back up to the higher level. We're going to tell you a little bit about a pregnancy story about how a girl accidentally became pregnant. An autistic woman accidentally became pregnant. We'll talk about that a little bit. We're going to dive into extinction, why stimming is important to me, teach proactive social skills to decrease inappropriate stimming behavior. Never try to fully eliminate a stim. It comes back as something different unless it's actually self-harming or harming someone else, then we want to eliminate it. Even stems need to generalize and apply in all contexts. So that's very important that stemming behavior generalizes and applies in different social settings, in different environments, in different contexts. We're going to talk about what we can see versus what we cannot see. We see current behavior, but we don't see skills. We are trying to shape with topography. So we don't see those skills that we're trying to teach, and that's what we want to see, so we're trying to shape them with topography. We don't see the MO or motivation. It's nice to understand why we have motivation and what our motivation is. Observing the invisible is important. We're going to talk about nonverbal communication, because that's 93% of communication. And then we're going to talk about operationally defining the visible and the invisible. So even if we can't see something, we can still operationally define it, and how we do that. I'm going to talk about what I think about that, because what we don't see, we still have to define, in my opinion. So we're going to talk about going from uncomfortable to comfortable. We're going to learn how to live with the uncomfortable. Must be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's very important. We can't learn if we're not comfortable being uncomfortable. I learn better when I'm comfortable in my environment. So our goal is to generalize and apply from uncomfortable to comfortable, making us comfortable in the uncomfortable. So we can generalize from in the uncomfortable environment. We generalize to make us comfortable, and that makes us comfortable in the uncomfortable, which, will make sense later on. So Being comfortable reduces anxiety, and generalization application from uncomfortable to comfortable. So we're going to talk about how to generalize from being uncomfortable to being comfortable. Then we're going to talk a little bit about dual relationships. That's walking a thin line, guys, so it's very important to understand this. Hard to help a client without connecting with us. Family outings are perfect natural environment teaching opportunities, and good personal relationships fuel good therapy, in my opinion. We're going to talk about the landscape of current adult services in America. The primary source of care is from a DSP for adults and not from a BCBA. Generalization and application from BCBA to DSP and from DSP to BCBA. Client will generalize up or down to the skill set being taught. So your client's either going to generalize to the skills being taught from a DSP or they're going to generalize to the skills being taught from a BCBA, in my opinion. I was higher functioning, but became lower functioning because I had to generalize down to work with a 19-year-old DSP. When working with my BCBA, I started becoming higher functioning because I was able to generalize up and work at a higher level of social skill. It's important to create interdisciplinary teams, in my opinion. We really want to have a psychiatrist on our team too, working with us. Motivation. We're going to talk about motivation. Many people think it's just a 3-term behavior contingency, antecedent, behavior, and consequence, but it's actually a 4-term contingency. So we've got the MO and the ABC, motivation, the antecedent, behavior, and the consequence. Motivation matters. It's very important. It's probably the most important part of the contingency, in my opinion. It's the difference between good and bad ABA. This is why ABA gets a bad rep, in my opinion, with autistic adults, because we don't care enough about the motivation in certain cases. And then we need to care and understand reasons for behavior. Guys, if we don't care about the reason for the behavior, we're not going to fully be able to fix a behavior or shape a behavior the way we want to shape it. And then we're going to talk about today's conclusion. So what can you take away from the event? When done properly, ABA is the most person-centered approach to helping me with autism that I've ever experienced. When done poorly, it's the worst approach to helping me. I don't think bad ABA is true ABA. So how do you help teens and adults? You're going to take away that ideas and brainstorming ideas to help. We're going to have a brainstorming session, how to help some teens and adults with autism. And then what you should take away from today is that you have the power to make a difference in someone's life. All right, so let's dive right in. Who's Travis? I'm a 37-year-old author, consultant, speaker in the field of autism. I was diagnosed with Asperger's at the age of 22. I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana, born and raised in Huntington, Indiana, and I love sports, music, friendships, and relationships. Decided at the age of 22 that I wanted to get a girlfriend. I went to see a counselor to find help with talking to girls. The counselor had a suspicion it was deeper and more complex than just talking to girls. I desire healthy relationships. I have experiences with unhealthy relationships. I pay girls for friendship and companionship on occasion. I have paid girls for sexual favors in the past. One day I Googled the phrase, how to get a girlfriend. That was a mistake. Finally diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome on October 30th, 2007 at the age of 22. I thought the diagnosis would be the answer I needed to get the help that I needed, but I had already aged out of the services and didn't get applied behavior analysis at the time. I read many books and articles on dating and relationships. I developed a special interest in girls and breasts. I developed depression and anxiety because I didn't know how to develop relationships. I used college financial aid refunds to pay girls staying out with me, and I didn't desire guys like I desired girls. So when Googling how to get a girlfriend, I found pickup artists. Pickup artists are appealing to autistic men because they run off rule-governed behavior. They say to say this and expect this from a girl. PUA treats women as objects and not people. While appealing to me, I later realized that I desired to respect women deeper than I wanted to get laid. Employment. So I've struggled all my life to keep a job. Self-employment is the way for me. Traditional forms of employment don't work for me. Job coaches are not social or dating coaches. This is very important because the type of support that I need on the job comes from social and dating coaches. It doesn't come from a job coach. So here again, just like the DSP, we're generalizing from job coach to BCBA. So what I really needed on the job was a BCBA to come in and help me work with keeping my job. And that's very important. Generalization problem between job coach and BCBA, like I just mentioned. I started and quit over 50 jobs in my life. I quit to escape. So I want to escape because I'm going to probably come on too strong and skip steps. So I'm going to be like, hi, how are you? And can I touch your breast with a coworker? And that's not going to go over very well. I'm going to get fired, and I know that. So instead of acting on that, I will just quit to escape that situation. I have inappropriate sexual behavior at work. I say, hi, I'm Travis. Can I touch your breast, as mentioned earlier? And I pretended to be lower functioning to get job coach to come in and help. So basically, like, because the job coach wasn't able to help with like the social and relationship aspect of life, I had to pretend to not know how to tie a trash bag one time to get the job coach to come in and actually do something, because like the job coach is there to work on adaptive living skills and I was needing to work on social skills. And so the two weren't lining up very well. So I used the job coach. I had to call and get the job coach to come in and pretended that I didn't know how to tie a trash bag to get them to help teach me how to tie a trash bag. So college experience, I went from undiagnosed to diagnosis during college. But I was 22 years old when I got diagnosed. I went to Indiana University in Bloomington, and it was very overwhelming. I quit in 2 weeks. Basically, I quit college in 2 weeks at IU in Bloomington, and I pay for friendship in college. The focus was on social skills, not academics. And I was paying to sit next to girls in class. I was expelled from Indiana Wesleyan University for being sexually inappropriate. Expelled the same day as my autism diagnosis. So the same day, October 30th, 2007, I got diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. I was actually expelled from Indiana Wesleyan University for inappropriate behavior. I got girls' contact info from Facebook. So back in the day, AIM Instant Messenger was pretty popular, right? So people and their cell phone numbers. Girls put their AIM Instant Messenger screen name and their cell phone number in their Facebook profiles. And so this was before Messenger on Facebook was really big. But I would basically grab their screen name from AIM and the phone number from... So yeah, I basically get... I got their information and started messaging them on AIM, and I'm texting their cell phone number, and girls thought that was inappropriate. Girls would be like, how did you get my phone number? And I'd be like, well, you gave it to me on Facebook. You put it right there in your profile. And they'd be like, well, that's not for you to just text me or call me or message me on AIM. And I didn't understand that. Like, I didn't understand why, because they had put it there in their profile and made it to where it was public information. I started going to the bar when I turned 21. I went to Pierre's, which is an entertainment center bar in Fort Wayne, Indiana, or was. I turned 21 and everyone else was going to the bar. So did I. I asked girls to dance with me. Girls said yes if I bought them a drink. Some followed through and some didn't. Here's the hey bitch, what's up story. So basically I met this guy and I was paying him to teach me how to talk to girls, kind of like a pickup artist, but he was a local guy. And basically he walked up to a woman and said, hey bitch, what's up? And like he tried to get me to do that, and like it didn't work for me because I didn't know the woman on the same level that he did, and I didn't understand that. So I was trying to do what he was doing, but I didn't have the same tone of voice. I didn't have the same context with the girl, and she didn't like it when I did it, but she liked it when he did it. And I had a hard time really understanding why that worked. Speaking of pickup artists, I ended up I would pay a guy in Madison, Wisconsin. I paid like $5,000. I was going to pay like $5,000 to go spend the weekend with him and have him work with me on talking to girls. My parents put a stop to that, and I never actually was able to go. I'm glad I didn't. Because pickup artists are very expensive, and like anybody can try and give you advice on how to talk to a girl or how to get a girlfriend. But chances are people that are giving you the advice and trying to sell you something like pickup artist material are trying to scam you for money. So I paid guys to teach me how to talk to girls, like I said, and I hired a pickup artist. So a lot of guys at the bar told me that I was a lost cause, and many pickup artists told me I was a lost cause because they didn't want to mess with me. People told me I had to be drunk to get a girl to like me. So one night I gathered with a group of guys and we went to their house and we did some pre-gaming before we went out. The guys told me I had to be drunk before I went out in order to talk to girls because of my Asperger's. So they made me do 12 shots of Patron in about a half hour, and then we went to the bar and drank some more. Needless to say, I was really drunk when talking to girls. I ended up getting kicked out of the bar because I was trying to get my money back for a shot. Long story short, the shot girl told me she'd dance with me if I buy a couple shots from her. So I did, and then she walked away and didn't dance with me. And I became very aggravated and upset. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take ownership of this, and I'm going to stand up for myself. And so I thought I would just follow her around. And I followed her around and kept asking her for my money back. Eventually, she got security involved, and they walked me out of the bar. So bartenders and social interaction is where I get most of my practice socializing. I've always made friends with bartenders and tried to get to know them because they're like a, what's that called? I'm trying to think of the term here, but they're like a associate. So like at first, when I first meet them, they're kind of like hired guns. So like they have to socialize with you because they're working, right? So they're socializing with me and they're letting me practice with them. And so that's how I meet most of my friends is I start out as associates and then I turn them into friends through social interaction and getting to know them. So bartenders have also been some of the greatest therapists for me. I actually talk to them more about my personal life than I do my own therapist and my own counselor. So that's really cool. And my current best friend was someone that I met at the bar. She was a bartender, and now we're best friends, and like we have the best friendship in the world. So, which is really great and special. Self-advocacy. This is very important here. Let me go back. So poor self-advocacy skills exist. I've always known what I've needed and wanted to live my best life. I've had trouble getting people to see my perspective. Dating isn't medically necessary. Say what? For me, dating is very medically necessary. It's one of the most important skills that I could learn having autism. And I always want to continue to learn how to date and have a relationship. So I got into many arguments with the state government officials because they would try and say dating isn't important or dating isn't medically necessary, and we fought about that. I'd also got into arguments over this thing called surrogate therapy, social skills coaching, dating coaching, and cuddle therapy. Those are all things that I wanted because I didn't feel like I had the social skills to be able to go out and master them and get them on my own. Needless to say, I'm happy to report now that I don't really want those things because I feel like I've got more social repertoire and I've got more social skills to be able to go out and chase down what it is that I'm looking for and be able to accomplish my dreams and goals. So I fell in love with ABA, interest in ABA. I fell in love with watching Peter Gerhardt present in Fishers, Indiana. I knew I needed true ABA therapy to learn social skills. I didn't get ABA with the BCBA until recently when I'm 37 years old now. So it's been about less than 6 months that I've had true ABA with Megan and Kara, my BCBAs. I tried to attack current friends and BCBA because they couldn't give me advice or help me due to ethics issues. I lost good friends over this. I thought attacking BCBAs would get the BACB and the government to provide me real ABA with BCBA. I reported some friends that were BCBAs and some random BCBAs to the ethics board to try and get people to understand it was unethical for them to not help me. My brain works backwards, and this is how we get to where I am at today. Seeing Peter present at BACA is one thing that really changed my life. He presented at the Behavior Analysis Center for Autism with Carl and Devin Sundberg, who own the place. Carl and Devin are great people. Really love their work. I met my friend Ben Seifert at the Behavior Analysis Center for Autism, and he's really big in the field and really doing well as a doctorate now and owns his own company. He's awesome. So context is king is something I learned from Peter Gerhardt during that presentation. Everything he said and taught I related to, and he was talking about me, and autistic men can't get women to even say hi to them or pay attention to them. It was something I took away from the presentation that he was doing there. Step 1 is step 787, so we're going to talk about this now. Hi, I'm Travis. Can I touch your breasts? Last step in a 787-step chain. Why do we know this? Because people with autism have good body part ID and really good body part ID most of the time, if you're higher functioning. And what do you need to do before you touch a woman? Consent is important. So you obviously, before you touch someone, you have to ask for permission. Actually need permission to ask for permission. So I've learned that you have to ask a woman for permission to ask her for consent before you actually ask her for consent. You can't come right out off the bat and ask to touch a woman. You must connect with her first emotionally, and you must ask non-verbally. You ask non-verbally. Most of the time, neurotypicals ask non-verbally. They don't come right out and ask, can I touch you? But for autistic men, it's actually a really good idea to be verbal and ask verbally for permission to touch, because we have a hard time reading all of that nonverbal communication and playing that game. Society doesn't like to talk about sex. We live it, but we don't talk about it. Context is king. Watching the children, reference from the movie Adam. So there's a scene in this movie Adam, which is really good, where he's at the park and he's just watching the children play. Somebody calls the police because he's watching the children play, and the police come up and ask him what he's doing, and he responds, I'm watching the children. Well, whenever somebody says they're watching the children, people automatically assume things, and they were going to arrest this guy, and they had to check his criminal history. Long story short, he got let go, but because he said that he was watching the children inappropriately, he said that in the wrong context, and so people took it inappropriately, and that created a problem and a conflict there. So that's very important to understand. Context is king. Good movies and shows on autism are Atypical, the story of Luke, Adam, and As We See It. Black and white thinking continued. I'm very black and white. The all or nothing thinking, step 1 is black. Step 787 is white. And steps 2 through 786 are very gray for me. I was so confused about talking to girls. I needed something to gravitate towards. So I was grabbing on to, like we talked about, kind of grabbing on to what Peter was teaching and just going with that. Peter told me about step 1 and step 787. Even though it doesn't work, but for me, it was my best option. So because I didn't have any replacement behaviors, like we talk about here, I was just skipping. I was wanting to use the step 1 and step 787 for many reasons, but for a couple reasons. One, because I really did want to touch, and 2, the anxiety, like I didn't know how to go through all the steps to build a relationship. So I was just easier for me to use what he was telling, the example that he gave, even though it was a poor example. It was something that I could grab onto and something that I could chase and use. I had no support, so I saw this Peter Gerhardt presentation in 2011. It changed my life and gave me hope. I didn't have a BCBA or anyone at Peter's level and expertise in sexual behavior to work with me and help me understand what Peter was saying and process the information. I was left trying to interpret everything Peter taught on my own. This led to me making poor decisions, and it led to me offending and disrespecting girls. Labeling types of relationships. So I tend to label people as different social relationships from step 1. I say hi, and I'm putting you in either a friend or a girlfriend category. So it's like, hey, how are you? I'm Travis. You're my friend or you're my girlfriend right away. This makes it hard to actually develop real, meaningful, healthy relationships. Relationships develop in gray areas. Flirting is sexual behavior. This might be true, but you don't verbalize sexual behavior from step 2. Step 2 is never, can I touch you? Can I touch you is always the last step. I thought that if you were attracted to someone, you had to say something sexual to show interest. Sexual behavior is not showing interest. So making sexual comments doesn't show interest. Neither does sexual behaviors. Social behavior shows interest. Sexual behavior is social behavior. Yes, it is, but must be used in the correct context if you're going to be sexual. Gray area means getting to know someone for who they are. There are some good questions to get to know someone that I found. So I recently found some good questions to ask to help me get to know people. I used to just be good at very basic small talk. So I was good at saying, hi, how are you? Hey, what's up? How's the weather? Can I touch you? And I would say these in different variations throughout the day. So I have a friend, Heather, my best friend that I text. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, I might say, hi, how are you today? At 10 o'clock, I might say, hi, how's your day going? At noon, I might say, hey, how's work going today? At 2, I might say, hey, how's the work day treating you? At 4, I might say, how was your day? At 6, I might say, how are you doing tonight? At 8 p.m., I might say, well, how was your day overall? And so on. So I do this, and I ask the same question, but in different variations. And that gets very annoying to my friends and people that I care about. I recently found some questions to ask that are more gray questions and in the gray area. So, like, what's your favorite pizza toppings, sweet or savory foods, what's the best meal you've ever eaten, and where did you grow up? Conversing isn't natural for me. Asking gray questions isn't natural for me. I currently seem very robotic in my social conversation skills. I need to learn to make it flow better, practicing every day and working hard to improve my social skills. These questions make it easier to avoid asking sexual questions and sexual behaviors. Being labeled hypersexual in my life, because my step 2 was always sexual, I was thought to be hypersexual. No one seen it as a social issue. People kept saying I had good social skills. Girls I was attracted to said I had bad social skills. This led to conflict between support staff and myself. Context is king continued. I've later learned I have good social skills in every context except for in the context of talking to a woman I'm attracted to. I skip steps when attracted to someone. I do this because I categorize in black and white. I also do this because of anxiety. Is it that I don't know how to socialize and know step 2 to step 786? Or is it anxiety? What is the function of my sexual behavior? Or is it a combination of the two? I think it is personally a combination of the two. Mindfulness. So I'm finding mindfulness helps me in many ways. It helps me be present. It connects my mind to my body. It slows me down and helps me understand gray social concepts. I can't learn if I'm not mindful. BCBAs need to be mindful too if we expect client to be mindful. Skills taught without being mindful probably have lesser chance of generalizing and applying in different social contexts and settings. I use a lot of ACT therapy, ACT therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. I try mindfulness, meditation, and yoga to help me. Mindfulness is an important soft skill for BCBAs and RBTs. It makes my brain more flexible to create thinking concepts, relieves a lot of my anxiety, and it helps me generalize and apply in different settings and social contexts. Context is king continued, so a technical skill is one thing. We can learn a skill, but it does me no good if I cannot apply it where I'm at. Natural environment teaching helps me generalize and apply. Start high and go to lower level skills for best generalization for me. I like to start learning at a higher level of skill. Then I backward chain to lower level skills, as I mentioned in the introduction. This gives me the best chance to generalize and apply a skill in different settings and different social environments. Meet the person as a therapist, as a BCBA and an RBT. Please meet the person where they're at. If you have a higher functioning kiddo, start high and go backwards. If you have a lower functioning kiddo, start low and work your way up. That is my personal opinion with autism, is you meet the person where they're at, you start where they're at and work either backwards or forwards, depending on where they're at on the functioning level. Functioning labels versus functioning levels. So my opinion is use functioning levels. I think functioning levels are okay. Avoid functioning labels because no one likes to be labeled. Even autistic people hate to be labeled. It just tells us how verbal or nonverbal someone is, to be honest with you. Here's the pregnancy story I was talking about earlier. So 22-year-old woman in New York City got pregnant. Mom and dad told her she couldn't get pregnant until she got married. The girl believed physically and scientifically she couldn't get pregnant until she got married. She took it very literal. She didn't use protection and got pregnant. Context is definitely king. I can't stress that enough. There were serious consequences to this story because now you have an autistic person who's upset at her parents because she feels like they lied to her, and an autistic person who's probably not ready to be a mother that's being a mother now, having a baby. Extinction. ABA gets a bad rep over extinction. Bad ABA focuses too much on extincting behavior. STEM should never be extincted unless dangerous to self or others. STEMs are coping skills, and a part of who I am. Proactive social behaviors. Teach proactive social skills to decrease stimming behavior. Stims need help generalizing and applying in different contexts and settings too. Don't be reactive, be proactive. There is an appropriate time and place for stimming. What we can see versus what we cannot see. We see behavior, it's visible and observable. We don't see the skill we are trying to shape with topography. How do we observe the invisible? We talk about that a little bit. I think it's important to really observe non-verbally what's going on, and to observe neurotypical peer modeling and do a lot of video modeling. So neurotypicals are going to be modeling that skill that you're trying to teach. You want to observe them doing it, and then generalize and apply how to teach the person with autism how to practice that social skill and shape that social skill with topography. So how do we observe the invisible? Like we just did that. That was very helpful, and we can just do that through video modeling, in my opinion. Nonverbal communication is communication. It's 93% of communication, so that's an important skill to work on. Accurate and descriptive operational definitions are important. So operational definitions are important because you really have to have that same definition so everyone on the team can actually understand what they're observing. Nonverbal communication. Communication is 93% nonverbal, as mentioned. It's only 7% verbal. It's important in sexuality and sexual behavior. Consent is often nonverbal. So how do we teach nonverbal communication? Well, to teach nonverbal communication, we have to do a lot of role play, a lot of peer modeling, a lot of video modeling, in my opinion, and just a lot of skills development through role playing and video modeling. That's very helpful. So how did we go from being uncomfortable to being comfortable? Sorry about that spelling error there. I'll fix that later. Living in the uncomfortable is hard, but important to growing. I have growing pains from going from uncomfortable to comfortable. Learning requires me to be in a comfortable environment. This is why it's important to get comfortable in the uncomfortable, so that I can learn and be comfortable. When I'm comfortable, I'm less anxious. So you can't always avoid the uncomfortable. So you have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Hopefully that makes sense. Anxiety and the uncomfortable. Being comfortable reduces my anxiety, gives me the best chance for learning in this context. Generalization occurs best when comfortable. Generalize from uncomfortable to comfortable is important. So how do you generalize? How do you learn a skill when you're uncomfortable and generalize it, so make it so you're comfortable? Generalize from comfortable to uncomfortable. So going back and forth. You got to generalize a skill where you're learning when you're uncomfortable then you have to practice it while you're comfortable. And then you have to practice learning skills when you're comfortable, and then applying skills when you're uncomfortable. So that's kind of like generalizing up and generalizing down, in my opinion. So let's talk a little bit about, for the BCBAs here, the importance of dual relationships and avoiding them and balancing them. So it's walking a thin line, but it's hard to help a client with autism without connecting with them. It's hard to get pairing going if you don't have that connection. And invitations to family outings are actually perfect times for natural environment teaching. Good personal relationships generalize to good therapeutic relationships, and good personal relationships will fuel good therapy. A little bit about medical necessity and ABA. I'm very passionate about this. I have an entire presentation on this, but medical necessity equals social value to me. If it is a socially valuable skill, I believe it's medically necessary. I wouldn't need it if it wasn't important. Social validity, in my opinion, is different for everyone. High functioning level versus low functioning levels. Coin identification might be medically necessary for one person, but not for another. Dating skills might be medically necessary for one, but not for another. Okay, so dosage. I think this depends on what outcomes the team stakeholders decide upon as goals. I want to be as high functioning as I can be. Some don't desire to be as high functioning as they can be. I feel like I could always go get 40 hours per week of ABA therapy and climb higher and higher on the functioning levels. In some ways, I don't feel I'll ever be fully satisfied until I get 40 hours per week of ABA to be as high functioning as possible. CBT and ABA. I was exposed to years of CBT. Like ABA, CBT is not for everyone. It wasn't for me. Granted, I might have had bad CBT. They said, expect a check in the mail and you'll likely get a check in the mail. expect a bill in the mail, you're likely to get a bill in the mail. My literal thinking made CBT challenging for me. I expected that check in the mail every day. When it didn't happen, I was angry and hated CBT for lying to me. CBT tried to get me to mask my autism. Change thoughts, but don't change social skills? That never made sense to me. Because if you're not gonna change the social skills and improve the social skills, you're gonna get the same social result over and over again, and you're gonna create those same negative thoughts over and over again. So it's gonna be hard to change those thoughts. CBT and ABA. So I see CBT as masking, while some adults with autism see ABA as masking, learning to mask. Pretending to have different thoughts is masking who I am. Learning social skills is helping me communicate who I am with others. ABA teaches me how to be who I am and be comfortable in my own skin. CBT created a fake image of who I am, in my opinion. And folks, that's the end of the presentation today. So as you can tell, there's a lot of important material that we covered. And now I'll take your questions and we can go from there. So thanks for attending, and I hope you guys have a great day. And I appreciate your questions.